Alrighty, this is David Saltzer from AngelsWin.com speaking today with Angels General Manager Jerry Dipoto. Jerry, how you doing today?
Outstanding.
You know, Angels fans have been very curious to find out about your first year, how it's gone. You know, we talked to you a little bit in the past, and you know, you wanted to wait till the offseason to sort of look at it. So, how do you feel you settled into your role?
Quite well. I'm comfortable with where we are right now. I think roughly 15 months after coming on board, and we've had a lot of change in the baseball operations department, specifically with scouting and player development, particularly with a new structure. You know, scout service coming on to oversee those two departments. We've got a new international director. We've got a new farm director. We've got a variety of new people in leadership positions throughout the organization. And it took a lot of time to get, and 15 months by calendar is not a great deal of time, but in baseball it's dog years. And, you know, we've learned a lot this first year. We've had quite a bit of shiftage in the personnel within the organization, and it took quite a while to get the systems and programs in place that we were comfortable with moving forward. And I feel like we've made a great deal of progress.
Well, can we talk a little more in depth about that? When you started, you undertook a whole organizational overview to really find out what's working, what's not working. What were some of the strengths you found, and then what were some of the areas that really kind of needed tweaking?
You know, the strengths were the quality of the talent on the major league field, that's real. And I said it when I did the introductory press conference when coming on board here with the Angels. But this is a team that, in large part, for the last decade, has been among the premier teams in Major League Baseball. They averaged 91 wins a season for a decade. Made 6 playoffs, won a World Series. It's a pretty significant degree of achievement, and there was a lot of talent on the Major League field. And it didn't feel like the Major League club was wholly in need of restructuring or rebuilding in order to contend. And I think that wound up being accurate. You know, an 89-win season, we were in the pennant race until the final week. Unfortunately, we weren't able to see it through. Some of that due to our own fault, to tell you the truth. I mean, we started the season slowly, and we had another lull in August. And I learned from those as well. But, you know, we didn't have to change a great deal about what we were doing at the Major League level last year. There weren't a terrific number of personnel changes, and we were just assessing. We did have, however, quite a bit to take care of organizationally: scouting, player development, front office construction. You know, with the exception of Justin Hollander, who's still on as our baseball operations director, and he's terrific. The rest of the front office was no longer here, so we had to rebuild that, starting with the baseball ops group here in Anaheim, and then moving on through our satellite positions and people who run the scouting and development departments. And we restructured all that. We brought a lot of new people and faces in: Scott Service and Hal Morris, Matt Klentak, and Bobby Scales, and Carlos Gomez. And I could go on and on. There's been a good deal of change. There's a lot of new faces, a lot of energy, and a lot of new creative ideas. And if I had to cite reasons why the Angels have been so successful, and one of the primary attractions was just the stability of the organization. Stable ownership. Artie Moreno's been terrific in what he's given this franchise and what he's allowed them to do over the course of the last 9-10 years. And you know, that stability has allowed us to implement programs and systems and introduce new people with a stable group of holdovers that have made it, I don't want to say a seamless transition, because anytime there's change, it begets discomfort. Sure. But in this particular case, we were able to overcome that transitional period. And by October of this past year, I felt like we were clicking on all cylinders, and we feel like we're really moving in the right direction.
Were you looking for particular skills, or just, you know, like they described President Lincoln and having just a wide range of opinions when you were assembling your team?
You want to have a wide range. I mean, I can't say that I know a great deal about the history of President Lincoln other than the obvious. Right. But I've studied much more baseball in my life than presidential backgrounds, but I am somewhat familiar with his background.
Just in general, that he was known for having a cabinet that vehemently disagreed with each other, and also with him, to give him quite a wide range of opinions as to what to do.
And I think that's essentially the way I operate every day. And as we built our Major League front office and our organizational pool of personnel, I prefer the idea of people who will disagree, who will create debate, who will find reasons to to poke a hole in a theory, because that stirs conversation, and conversation promotes education. And we've got a group of people who are very strong in their opinions, that have a diverse and widespread set of experiences, whether it be playing experience on the field in the case of a Hal Morris or a Scott Service, Bobby Scales, or experiences in the administration or I guess legal end of the game, guys like Matt Klentak and Justin Hollander and Mike LaCasa. So with that, and with the holdovers, the Bill Stonemans and the new people we brought in like Marcel Latchman and Tim Schmidt and Larry Corrigan, a variety of different experiences that covers decades, and not everybody agrees on every subject matter. And I think that's important. I want to, as I've told many people the day that I hired them, the day that we're going to have to let you go is the day that you agree with me just to agree. We have to find reasons to poke holes in theories and find the right answer rather than just an answer.
You've earned quite a reputation amongst some of the fans with your handwritten responses to their things. What kind of concerns have you heard from the fans, and how do you feel your relationship is evolving with them?
I feel like the relationship's evolving well. To answer the last question first, the concerns are no different than any other fan base and any other professional sports city. Everybody wants to win. They want to have players that they can connect with, that will be here for a length of time. I think that's the fabric that binds baseball through the years, is that historically the game is about the fans. It's about the fans coming into the ballpark, connecting with a team. It predates, the relationship between the fan and the hometown club predates television, it predates the internet, it predates the news media as we know it today. It was just simply the fans and the players. And I'd like to facilitate that, to put together a group of players that is here for a length of time, that can operate at a high level. Obviously, there are individual players that gain a lot of love from the fans. Obviously, for us, this offseason was a unique one, and there was a large shift in player personnel, and we did turn the roster a little bit. And one of the things that was painful for the fans was watching Torrey Hunter leave the Angels, was watching Dan Herron and Irvin Santana leave the Angels. But, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is put the best 25-man club and build the most productive organization we can over time to sustain a winning environment on the field. And I think at the end of the day, in as much as those individual players connect with fans and are so much a part of the fabric of Angels baseball, the winning teams are at the end of the day what we'll remember the most, and we'll remember the most romantically, and that's what's fun. And I love communicating with fans about that connection with the game, and when somebody writes to me about the passion they have for baseball, or particularly for Angels baseball, I'll always pick up a pen and write them back.
Well, that's good to hear. Well, let's talk about some of those deals. I mean, in your first 15 months, you signed about over $500 million in contracts, if you total it all up. How does it feel, one, knowing that you're able to do that and you have an owner that committed, and two, just what's it like writing like a $250 million contract, or 125 to Josh Hamilton?
Well, I mean, it's exciting to bring on players like that. As you touched on, none of it's possible without Artie Moreno. I don't know what it's like to write that check. Artie takes care of that, and he's like I said, he's been very giving and allowed we as an organization to go out and be aggressive and seeking and ultimately landing the right players. But it's a thrill to be able to bring players like Albert Pujols, like Josh Hamilton and C.J. Wilson to the Angels. But just as importantly, it's fun to draft the 30th rounder who winds up cranking through your system and arriving in the big leagues and turning into a nice support player on a 25-man roster. It's a thrill to be involved with the independent or international signing the 16-year-old kid out of the Dominican Republic and watching him grow up in a 6 to 8 year period and show up on your field when he's 24 years old as a grown man. They're such neat experiences through the baseball development process that I'd never want to get so jaded that the only way you can feel good about yourself or successful is to bring in an MVP on a giant free agent contract. There's so many ways to find productive players and or to enjoy your job. But those are clearly guys, they're on magazine covers, the pictures are on the walls, and they're the guys that stir it out here every day. You know, they're the straw that stirs the drink, and we're thrilled to have them. I'm excited to have had the opportunity to have gone through that in my first 15 months on the job. And frankly, I hope that we're in a position in future years to continue to deliver players like that over time, whether it be from our own developmental system or out in the free agent market.
Are you constantly working to try and layer so that you have those like an Albert Pujols and a Josh Hamilton, and then layers at different price, salary levels so that you can maintain this for a long period? I mean, how much do you balance between, say, winning now versus winning over a decade when you're trying to look at a free agent?
Both, actually. And I think to break down what you just said, we're always trying to create a flow in how our payroll model exists or progresses through the years, that one salary offsets the other. We have a general idea of what our payroll limits are going to be year to year or over time. And you're always concerned most with the idea that we're going to be competitive and in a winning mode today. We want to be like that every year. That's the goal, is to be in a position to contend and win every year. But we're always of the mindset that we want to be able to sustain that. And in as much as anything, one of the things that was important to us this offseason was to bring in players and continue to build a model that created age disparity. That we had the young and we had the veteran, that we were not allowing ourselves to age before our eyes. Obviously, we've gotten more expensive over time, as most teams do, but what we don't want to do is we don't want to watch our average age climb to the point where we're watching a window close. We want to do all we can do to have prime years players who are performing at the peak of their abilities, however much they cost, whether it's the Hamiltons and the Pujols of the world or the 25th man on your roster, and balance the age of the club, the cost of the club, and your ability to sustain a winning window.
Well, at the same time, though, do you look at like windows? You know, a lot of commentators have talked about, well, we have Albert Pujols now, you have Mike Trout right now, and so signing someone like Josh Hamilton made a lot of sense because it capitalized on that 5-year window where you would have Trout and Pujols in prime years as well as Hamilton in great years, so that you could really leverage it much more. Was that something that really factored in as well?
Absolutely. And I think, the wonders of a guy like Mike Trout, as a specific example, is that Mike, he'll start his 21-year-old season this coming year. There's really no end in sight for what should be his prime years. And if his optimum years are ages 26 to 32, like with most players, I can't wait to see what they're like, if 20 looked the way it looked. But the idea of having the extraordinary players, the MVPs, like a Josh Hamilton or an Albert Pujols, in what are still their prime performance years or premium production years, in addition to young players like Mike Trout and Mark Trumbo and Peter Borges, who are still on the 0 to 3 end of their career, who have not yet entered the arbitration system, who balance out our payroll. And from a talent perspective, we feel like in between that group, or those two groups, the Pujols, Hamilton, Weaver, Wilson group, and the Trout, Trumbo, Borges, we'll call it Garrett Richards group, Ernie Frieri probably fits in that group. What makes our team unique, and I hope what makes our team special, is those 26 to 32-year-old players that exist in the in-between. It's the Howie Kendricks and the Eric Ibars and the Alberto Callaspos, the guys who oftentimes fly under the radar and are real high-quality players that nobody gives enough credit for what they do. And particularly our middle infield, Kendrick and Ibar, the uniqueness of finding two guys who can handle those positions defensively, who are as durable as those two have been, and who produce offensively the way they produce. It's not easy to find in today's industry. We feel fortunate to have those guys as well.
When you're looking at that, though, like a situation like many organizations, ourselves included, rank Caleb Coward as the top prospect. So do you often look at like their horizon for when they would be ready and looking at the moves you're doing?
Absolutely. We're in the midst of trying to finalize a contract for Alberto Callaspo that will cover 2013 and 14. And one of the attractions in bringing Alberto back for a 2-year stretch is that it builds a bridge toward Caleb Cowart. And we believe in Caleb. We also believe that he's among our best prospects and do feel like he has the chance to be an everyday or impact player at the big league level. But we also don't want to undersell what the value of Alberto Callaspo to our present club is. So the idea of building a seamless bridge that will allow our present to connect with our future it's too good to pass up, particularly when you're talking about a player who's in his late 20s, still very productive, and another who's 20 years old and not yet starting what should be the most productive years of his career.
Well, also he brings some flexibility as well. I mean, you have overlapping positions. I mean, part of the attraction of someone like a Mark Trumbo also, not that he could go back to the outfield or he could spell an Albert Pujols at first base. So one of the things I've noticed is you built quite a bit of flexibility there so that you have overlapping pieces in the event something bad, not that we want it to, but all clubs suffer injuries at times. You have overlapping pieces. I mean, is that a big factor for you?
That was one of the primary goals this offseason. Obviously, we had many, but one of the primary goals this offseason was to create greater depth than we had a year ago. And, presently we are not as deep in the minor leagues as we'd like to be. And, that unfortunately takes time to develop as a deep minor league system. But we felt like with guys like Garrett Richards and Hank Conger and Luis Jimenez, we had a variety of players who were in a position to be able to contribute at the major league level. And I'll throw into that group guys like Nick Morande and Cole Calhoun, but not necessarily ready for everyday positions. So in addition to that group, what we did was we took a look at how we could create enough flexibility and usability on our 25-man roster that you had, I don't want to say you had interchangeable pieces, but you could cover yourself within the 25-man roster, that you didn't have to go too deep into your minor league system to access players, not necessarily for roles or bench support roles, the situational right or lefts and bullpens, more in the case of potential injury. If you've got a player, a significant contributor or everyday player who is injured during the course of a season, those are particularly difficult holes to fill unless you have a minor league system that is ready to produce everyday players now. And we feel like after Mike Trout graduated to the big leagues, we were maybe in a window where we were a year and a half away from that next level of everyday player coming. So with Mark Trumbo or Vernon Wells, with the idea that we could string together Alberto Callaspo, players that could spell us at a variety of positions in the event of injury, that was one of the goals this offseason, and I feel like we accomplished it.
How important is it for you as a general manager? You haven't had to go to arbitration yet. How important is it for you to reach an agreement with a player as opposed to the whole arbitration process?
I can't say it's preference. The preference is to reach an agreement before you get to arbitration. Everybody walks away happy. But the arbitration process is there for a reason. It's there for the club. It's there for the player. If need be, we'll go through arbitration to make sure that we strike the best deal we can strike in favor of the Angels. But you want to be fair to every player and acknowledge what he's accomplished and compensate him for what he's accomplished. But we're in a pretty good position right now. We just have one arbitration eligible player left to take care of before opening day. We were able to come to agreement with each of our players last year and did not have to go through the process. In an ideal world, you can wrap it up before opening day or before the arbitration cases are heard in February. I don't know that that'll be the case this time. If not, that the process is there for a reason. We're willing to use it.
What's your advice to fans for surviving the offseason? I mean, we always hear all sorts of stuff. What's the craziest thing you've heard, and what advice do you have for fans on how to survive the hot stove season?
I mean, you ride the waves. The beauty of baseball is that it never goes away. The hot stove has always been there. You get to surf through with the rumors. I would say don't believe everything you read.
What's the craziest one? Is there one that just stands out where you like, there's no way we're doing that?
No, I can't say there's been any this year. I can say there were a few last year. And, I mean, we were wildly connected to just about every free agent in the market last year. And there were a couple of guys last year that we were on the verge. We had made offers to, at least by report on the internet, and we'd never even made contact with that player. So, and or his representatives, and we hadn't even discussed them internally. So you'll hear a lot of bad information, but the beauty of the baseball hot stove, it's just a water cooler talk. It's being able to sit there and talk about, the trade that might make your club better or put them over the top. It's whatever you think as a fan. The wonderful thing about baseball is there's so much subjectivity in how we view the game, and everybody has an opinion because most people have done it on some level, whether Little League or high school, college, or the professional level. We've all done it. We all love it. Everybody's got an opinion. I think it's fun to kick around.
What's the, fans saw Moneyball, where, in the movie, Billy Beane just picks up the phone and in 5 minutes is able to make a trade. What's it like? How do you go about really making a trade? And, are there crazy stories like that happen, or?
I haven't gone through the 5-minute trade yet, but trades generally take time and they're hard to do. Each organization has its own criteria, what they're looking for. Most, and this is one from the Hot Stove League to the practical application, is that at the end of the day, you may have players that don't necessarily fit your roster or that you'd be willing to move. It doesn't necessarily mean that one of the other 29 teams has any more favor for that player or would like him in a trade. So it's not quite like trading baseball cards when we were young. There are health records involved, there are ages and salaries to consider, and there are positional fits and needs for other clubs. But typically you'll make contact with a club, you'll suggest a player or players that you have interest in. You asked earlier, how I stay busy during the day. We'll stay in constant contact with clubs just to know what they're looking for, what they're trying to do. And the schedule will kick up and slow down through the course of the year. In March and in April, and then again in July, and then again as we hit toward October and November, that those are going to be very intensive discussion times with other clubs. And oftentimes you've laid the groundwork for doing a trade through 15 conversations prior to when you actually start talking about that specific deal.
Now, do you ever use the media, or have you ever been sent messages through the media? We always hear like, oh, well, they're just trying to put a feeler out or something like that. Have you, or is that something that you've been the recipient of, a message that way?
I was the recipient of communication through the media as a player fairly frequently, particularly in my early years. But no, in these roles, I opt to try to be as upfront as I can. We're very open with our players. We discuss what their roles are, how to anticipate or prepare for the coming season. And even when we get down to instances where the player is actively being shopped or moved, we'll openly communicate with the players whenever possible or whenever it's appropriate. They're human beings, they're grown men who have the right to understand what they're going to be asked to do day to day or where they might be asked to do it.
Looking at what some of your players are doing right now, we're hearing that Mark Trumbo and others are having a new workout regimen. How much do you encourage players to go out and seek that? And, what kind of latitude does the club have, and how much feedback do you want from what they're doing back to the club?
It's constant. The feedback and the communication with the players, even through the off season, is constant. Guys will go through, particularly over the last 10 or 15 years in the game, there's always some type of new workout regimen. There's always some type of new a guru that you'll run into and a new way to prepare. Right now the hot thing is yoga. You got a lot of guys into yoga, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It promotes flexibility. I've done it myself. It's very peaceful. I wish I had more time to do it. But at the end of the day, the guys are going to prepare. Each guy's going to have his different take or slant. Adam Neville and our training staff, Lou Yoakum and our medical staff are in constant communication or daily communication with the players. I will get a daily report from Adam on where our players are physically, what they're doing to prepare, and essentially it's turned into a 12-month-a-year preparation and/or readiness to play. And our guys are going to come into spring training, and 99.9% of them are going to be ready to go as if it were opening day of the regular season, as opposed to many years ago when they got ready in the spring.
Earlier you talked a little bit about the art of the deal. Where did you learn the art of the deal, the business background, and then can we talk a little more about how you go about doing it? Angels fans have heard like Jerry, that Mr. Carpino has played a pivotal role, and Mr. Moreno has been very instrumental with Josh Hamilton and with Albert Pujols, that the connection he's made. How do you go about designing how you're going to approach a deal, as well as the financial aspects of it?
Every deal's a little bit different, and some deals are a little bit more complicated than others. Some deals are a lot more expensive than others, and I guess you can go anything from a 6-year free agent signing or picking up an independent league player for $3,000 buyout price from a team in the Atlantic League to signing Albert Pujols to a 10-year contract with a personal services agreement on the back. And each one of those deals is going to require a different level of participation. But everything we do from an organizational standpoint, we include everybody. And that goes for me and Matt Klintak, Scott Service, Hal, Justin, the people up here in the front office, to John Carpino, who's the club president, to Artie, who's the club owner, to Mike Soshan, the major league staff downstairs, to each of our individual scouts and coordinators at the minor league levels. We'll incorporate anybody. Simple stuff as just an example. Right now we have Jeff Cirillo on our pro staff as a scout, and Jeff played a long and successful major league career, played with a number of different teams and with a lot of different players. Just recently we've tapped into Jeff for his impressions of players that he may have played with along the way in Milwaukee or Minnesota or Colorado, how they're wired from an internal perspective, because you can assess outward talent. You can't always assess how that player is going to fit in your clubhouse and how he may affect your chemistry. So the more research you can do in putting a deal together, the better. Oftentimes as you're working through some of the larger deals like a Pujols or a Wilson or a Hamilton, those are deals, and I think Artie Moreno has suggested it and said it best, and those are deals that are striking some sort of a partnership with the player. We are equally as invested in the Angels' success as that player's success, and that player should feel the same way. And in that type of deal, I think it's pivotal that Artie's involved when you're talking about a player that you're committing to for that length of time. It's the owner of the team. I think at the end of it, he is the one who signs off on everything that we do, and for him to be involved in the biggest deals we do is paramount to our success.
Looking at last season, were you working in parallel on Hamilton and Greinke, or were they when one sort of came to a natural close or so, did you move on, or were they parallel tracks or sequential?
Those actually turned out to be sequential, but at the end of the day, we're running on parallel tracks with so many players, so many deals, so many different trade discussions every day that you'd be stunned if you saw the actual volume. And we touch base with dozens of free agents that we never actually engaged with from a dollars and cents negotiation perspective. And you'll go through so many discussions with teams about potential trades that never come to fruition or never really gets off the ground. So some is just concept, some is real practical application. And in the case of the Hamilton-Greinke, that particular episode turned out to be sequential, where we were engaged with both at the same time, but the dollars and cents negotiation never actually got off the ground with Zach because of the timing of it. And our dollars and cents negotiation with Josh was launched and sewn up within a 7-day stretch of time. So, but we were engaged with him for closer to 3 weeks. So it was those weren't necessarily overlapping, but oftentimes they are.
Two things I noticed with the pitching staff you assembled, which I'm excited to see next year. One, you went with more fly ball type pitchers. Was that designed to take advantage of this incredible outfield defense we're going to see, or was that just coincidence?
Yes, on the former end. We went out and we essentially took a look at what we do well. We have a fairly pitcher-friendly ballpark that generally treats fly balls well, and I believe we have a very rangy and athletic outfield with Borges and Trout and Josh Hamilton that we should be able to cover a good deal of the outfield grass. So we felt like the player or the pitcher that best accentuated our strengths might be the fly ball guy who threw strikes, did not allow too many free passes, and just we have a very good infield defense with Pujols and Ibar and Kendrick and Callaspo, but our outfield defense is special and it really fits the ballpark. And with what was available on the market, you know, you've got your ground ball guy, you've got your fly ball guy, you've got your guy that does both the ground ball, fly ball thing, and then you've got the strikeout pitcher. It's very difficult to find strikeout pitchers who also get ground balls. They don't grow on trees. It's very difficult to find fly ball pitchers who strike people out because they're not usually readily available. Those are typically the higher strikeout pitchers in baseball, where you're getting something in that you know, we'll call it 8 to 9 strikeout per game rate. Those are difficult animals to find. They're typically sewn up to long-term contracts. And you know, the pitcher that was most readily available on this market this year was the steady strike throwing fly ball pitcher, who are going to give up some that go out of the ballpark from time to time due to their own style. But if that's what's available in the market, and that fits your ballpark, and that accentuates the strength of your club, and it also happens to come at what we think is a generally affordable rate, it seems like all the planets are lining up for you to be able to access exactly what you're looking for.
The second thing I noticed is you brought some more local guys back. Was that, again, coincidence or just out of, was that more by design?
You know, in the beginning, I think it was coincidence. You know, in the cases of, let's say, Ryan Madsen, I think it was by design, because it was a choice of his to come here. I do think he could have done better from a financial perspective in this market, going out and seeking an opportunity elsewhere. But he was committed to the idea of playing here with the Angels, and we were able to work out something in that regard. But as it started to pile up, and you know, Tommy Hansen was almost accidental. We didn't realize that he was from the Riverside area because he had moved away, and etc. So I can't say it was by design in the beginning, but at the end of the day, if you have two equal animals and one of them grew up 20 minutes from here and is invested in the Angels, grew up with an Angels hat and Angels gear in the closet, there's something really unique, and we'll use Ryan Madsen again as an example. There's something really unique and endearing about the guy who grew up rooting for the team, who then comes to play for that team, and I feel like that guy is going to run through a wall to make sure that this organization is successful as it can be, and that's important.
Are there any particular stats you use when you are really trying to evaluate who to go focus on? Are there, you know, fans have huge debates over every different stat that you can come up. Are there any in particular that stand out in your mind?
Absolutely, and I think, again, it's a case-by-case type of study, and the obvious are for pitchers, hit rate is very important. The fewer hits you give up, the better off you're going to be in general. Walk rate is equally, if not more important. Throwing the ball over the plate matters for a lot. And then strikeout rate. You want to see players, guys who can miss bats. Very difficult, again, to find someone who can manage all three of those, not give up a lot of hits, strike out a lot of them, and don't walk very many. They're typically all-stars or on their way to the Hall of Fame, and they're very difficult to sink your teeth into. But you can find individual pitchers who do one or more of those things particularly well. And as an example, you know, in this free agent market, Joe Blanton was the premium strike thrower in the market this year. It was a guy who he throws the ball over the plate and has consistently done that over the course of his existence in the major leagues. Last year ranked in the top 5 in the league in best walk rates. So, you know, for us that was a premium attraction for him, again, to capitalize on our ballpark, our defense, our alignment, and we believe that he'll be a good fit here. You know, Tommy Hansen has a very good strikeout rate, always has. So Tommy doesn't have the walk rate that Joe has. If Tommy were able to couple Joe's propensity for throwing the ball over the plate, or penchant for throwing it over the plate, in addition to his own ability to strike people out, would be dealing with a much different animal at this stage in his career. But each one of those guys has something that they do particularly well, and I think with the 4 veteran players, you know, in the rotation, which I would say were Weaver, Wilson, Vargas, and Blanton, all 4 of those guys have shown the ability to go out and chew up in the neighborhood or greater than 200 innings in a season, and that's a pivotal number to me, because the further you can get into a game, now you allow the changes that we made in our bullpen to be impact changes, rather than just adding more firemen for the crew to try to run to the fire when it's time, rather than take the ball when it's time to go win a game.
So what are you excited most about for 2013?
Just watching how the depth plays out. You know, I think we added enough depth to this club that I feel like we're, as you said earlier, we're flexible at a variety of different positions. while we don't have a variety of household names on our 12-man pitching staff, I think we'll surprise people in what we do from a club perspective, and that's the most important thing to us. And to see what happens with the top half, or even just the flow of our 9-man lineup, with Mike Trout leading off, and then the dynamic of Pujols and Hamilton and Trumbo hitting in the middle. And I think when you can line up a club that has Chris Iannetta hitting ninth, it's not bad. It's not bad, and we're excited to see that happen.
How do you see Houston joining the AL West affecting the division and the race?
Just another team and another game that you have to go out and win. I've had the ability to see the Astros a lot in recent years. Haven't been in the National League prior to last year. The Astros are in a down period in their existence, but I've learned for too often and for too many years in this game to forsake anybody's ability to come up and bite you in a given year. Every great player is going to have a thorn in their side, and it's going to be a guy you never heard of. Every modest player is going to have the number of a future Hall of Famer that just couldn't figure him out. And if you go back and look at the won-loss percentages of teams in given years, even the dominant teams have someone on their schedule that gives them a hard time. And I'll say this about the Houston Astros: they are going to be the thorn in somebody's side this year, and our goal is to make sure it's not us.
Moving on to the lighter side, how's your family settled into Southern California, and what do you like to do outside of the ballpark?
Well, we work so many hours in a day. We shifted over here. My family moved in toward the end of May last year, and we've had a great time. We're living over near the coast, and we really enjoy our time here. The hours away from the ballpark are so limited. I mean, we'll get to the ballpark at 8:30 in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, and run through an off-season night where I get home about 7 at night. During the season, I get home about 1 in the morning. So, the days run particularly long, and there's always something going on. But the wonderful thing about this game is, just like being a fan, it's very family-friendly, and it's interactive game. My wife and children can come to the game. They can sit and talk it. My son can come for the day and go down and wander around the cages and just watch a Major League batting practice. Those are great perks that many people don't get exposed to, that allow our family to enjoy this as a group event rather than just my job.
Seeing how Southern California is such a big entertainment mecca, have you been able to take advantage? I mean, is there like some concerts, some bands, any other thing that you really enjoy doing outside of here?
My hobby's baseball, my job's baseball. When I leave here, I just enjoy spending time with my family and whatever they want to do. If it's that we enjoy going to the movies, we do that frequently. We enjoy eating out. We have had some chance to go see some shows, concerts, but nothing regular. I'm excited about going to see the Ducks. I like going and watch a live hockey game, though this is I'm in about a 10-day window where I can pick up 2 games before our season starts, and then it's good night.
At least you'll get 2. I mean, for a lot of us, we thought we were getting any this season, so
yeah, take it when it comes.
Take it when you can. Is there anything else you'd like to tell Angels fans or people at angelswin.com?
I think so. First of all, I appreciate the support. The fact that Angels Win is so interested in what we do every day, and as much that the fans are interested in the product on the field, I think it's intriguing that somebody's interested in how we put it together or why we think the way we think in a given circumstance. And I wish I could be the Wizard of Oz and take you behind the curtain on everything we do, but where it's appropriate, I think we're very open to it. You guys have been great, and I hope you're as excited about this season coming up as we are, because the 25 guys we have running out there, the manager and staff, we're all excited about this team. I know Artie's excited about this team. Now we're just hoping we can keep them healthy and run through 162 and see where we are come October.
Well, we're looking forward to that. Thank you so much for your time today.
No, my pleasure, Dave.